Even before Harry Belafonte won global fame as a performer, he saw himself as part of a grand tradition of artists who use their voices for change. His role model was Paul Robeson, the singer and activist whose career was derailed by McCarthyism. This week, the National Recording Registry honored Belafonte by selecting his 1956 album Calypso for permanent preservation. That gave me a chance to sit down with him, and he drew a direct line from his years traveling the world with Martin Luther King Jr. back to something that Robeson told him when he was just starting out.
Artists are the gatekeepers of truth. He said, only through the world of the arts do we know who and what we are and our history of civilization. Because long before historians and long before people ascribe themselves as the caretakers of life and culture, the song did that. It was and in the black community, it was our primary tool of communication. So I saw the song as having something far more than just to delight audiences and people can dance and sing. It had content, and I began to sing this content of black protest music.
It strikes me that you were all willing to risk everything for your beliefs, for the things that you fought for. Somebody could say, well, you know, you have a record contract, you have a movie contract, and if you make the studio look bad, if you make RCA look bad, that can all go away.
What happened was quite the contrary. I didn't make anything look bad, I made everything look great, you know. So even when the industry, the films and whatnot, abandoned me because my politics got in the way of what they thought was the best interest of the product, had an attitude that said, you know, I have a constituency without you. And as a matter of fact, this constituency gave me a sense of power.
You've been talking about Dr. King. What specific impact did he have on you when you first met him and as you watched him and as you followed him around the country?
When I went and heard him speak, I was blown away. This guy was 24, I was 26. His moral sense was quite keen, and it drove his politics. And once he had hit that stride, and that was going to be his base, he then began to reach out and become far more open to ideas and things. The more he relied on us, the more we found comfort in supplying him with whatever resources. Mine was to run my mouth and be propaganda. In following Martin, the path was very clear. What we were achieving was very obvious. And the more we saw achievement, the more we were enabled.
He many oftentimes in his speeches said the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Where are we, this country, in that arc?
Where we've always been.
Which is?
Consumed by racism, consumed by the greatest single fault in the cultural DNA of America. I realized very early on that beyond my art and my other sets of platforms, nothing was going to ever remove me from the permanent struggle of race. Because America, in the beginning they killed you with the Ku Klux Klan. Now they have cops in the streets of New York shooting down our kids with impunity. And Bobby Kennedy got into all of this. He became a force with Dr. King that could make a difference. And I think had those men survived, we'd be in a very different place. But they didn't. But they left us a legacy that endures. And I will be a part of that legacy till the day I die.
Wow.
I mean,
still a fighter.
Still a fighter,
yeah.
And you know, I was just struck. One of the things that really struck me about this interview, Anne-Marie, especially when we started talking about Dr. King, yes, when you interview famous people and people who've had an impact on history, you get that, right? But when he started referring to Dr. King as Martin, Dr. King, for all of us, he passed away, he died, he was assassinated before we were born, most of us, right? And so we hold him up as this icon, and we refer to him reverently as Dr. King because we never knew him personally. We only know him through his words and through his teachings and his writings. And here's a man who was his friend and who calls him Martin, even in just a conversation in an interview here. And I was struck all of a sudden by not only the fact that I was so blessed to be able to have this interview and to work as a journalist and work for CBS and I can interact with him, but that I was talking to somebody who directly
was a witness, was a part to, was touching history.
Blew me away,
Yeah.
blew me away. And he said something that I didn't really know a lot about, which is that he helped finance Dr. King in the early days when he needed money, when he was being arrested and through the trials and tribulations that he was going through. It was Harry Belafonte and others who had deep pockets who were able to keep that ministry going.
That's very cool.
It was a great, and it just, I learned just so much just sitting down with him for that 1 hour. His love of Paul Robeson, the great African-American Renaissance man, essentially. And I told him, you're a direct descendant of Paul Robeson. He talked about meeting Paul Robeson when he was a young actor and how odd he was. And I said, well, that's how we feel with you. And he was touched by that. It was really cool.
That's great.